Thank you so much. All right, everybody has to admit to got it. And so we welcome Professor Luvon Sheppard, but he goes by Luvon for all of us, if that's all right, for
That's
questions
fine.
and so
Thank
on.
you.
And he is a beloved professor of art and a mentor to so many people. What really impressed me about him is his vision for art and his humanitarian spreading of art as love for the community he teaches in, and for distant communities like ours, because he agreed to be interviewed today. And he's accompanied by my wonderful artist brother-in-law, Luke Lorenzo, who actually studied under Luvon Sheppard
that's so cool.
years ago. And he just retired from being a very beloved high school art teacher to do his own art now.
Yes.
All right. So I have a slideshow.
Oh, what's this?
Jordan, if you would help me to admit, Ian is coming. Oops, yeah, I think I admitted him. But thank you. If you continue, got that warning about my unstable Wi-Fi connection. I hope that doesn't mean much. So I'm going to share my screen because I want you to see both Luvon and his work. And so I'm going to start, hold on. I'm going to start a slideshow from the beginning, if this thing lets me. There. Professor Sheppard, or Luvon, teaches at the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is in Rochester, New York. And the way I first met him is he was doing a free community workshop right outside his gallery. And he was doing it in watercolor. And what that meant is that mothers and their children would come, little kids. So here he is with me, a very sunny day. I think it was July, right? Very hot. And here he is with Luke. But I want you to look at this picture because there's this guy up there doing a mural right behind us. And I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. So I'll let you read. Luvon Sheppard's work is in the permanent collections of a bunch of places.
Yeah, it starts with a key composure on the back. It allows them ultimately to change the.
Hello, can you guys silence your audio, please, if you're not talking? I appreciate it. And by the way, to talk, you can hit the space bar and hold it down while you're talking and then release it and it'll go to mute. All right, so I'm going to show you just a few pictures of Luvon from the 1970s when he was a recent graduate. He actually attended RIT, was a recent graduate of the school in art. And he got a job at the Memorial Art Gallery, which is the major art gallery in New York, in Rochester, New York. And he started a project called All of Us, where he essentially had a program of teaching art, and he would corner his friends in art who weren't employed and had them do teaching sessions, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Luvon. I'm just trying to summarize what you were doing. And from that, he just started bringing people together in art. That didn't diminish his artistic accomplishment, though. It was art for art's sake and high art. So All of Us became a program that was actually very heralded by publications and other things. And what he wanted was break down racial, economic, and generational barriers with art. And that really impressed me about Luvon. Because it kind of mimics my mission in art, starting late in my life. He just, as he says here, you can see people gathering outside his gallery. It's called the Joy Gallery. Is that where it is? Am I correct there?
You're absolutely correct. You're right.
Yeah, and then, you can see people of all ilks, like all people in that little workshop that I attended and helped out in it was just full of people from other cultures and other ethnicities, and they were all like just fixed on Luvon, but also with each other. And that was so wonderful. As a tribute, one of his students did this painting of him. And you can see him here again teaching. And he has been teaching at RIT for 50 or so years. And actually there's a page at RIT, at the Rochester Institute of Technology, that just lists the accolades that people give him. From all over the world, his students have moved on, and then they kind of think back about it. So you can see it, and I sent the link out yesterday if you received it. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what a person he is. But back to that mural that was being painted behind us, it turns out that the city of Rochester has a beautification project, and there are murals that sort of mimic works of art throughout the city. And this happens to be, this is the muralist, who is essentially recreating Luvon's watercolor of two maintenance workers at RIT on the walls. And this is what the mural looks like, which I thought was amazing. How many of us get our mural, get a mural of our work up there? And just in case you think that he slacks and sort of rests on his laurels, I wanted to show you his current teaching schedule. I could not do this. I don't know how many of us could do this. So some of his work, and now I'm going to invite him in to talk to us, please, and tell us a little bit about some of his work and the evolution of it. Now, he told me he started teaching watercolors because nobody else, as a junior faculty member, nobody else wanted to teach it, right? And take it from there, Luvon.
Well, the All of Us Art Workshop is where it started. We had a bunch of classes there at All of Us. I mean, from stained glass window cutting to figure drawing, oil painting, all kinds of classes. I think there must have been 15 to 20 classes.
Whoa.
And watercolor was one of them. None of the people that I had there in the group wanted to teach watercolor, or they were afraid of teaching watercolor. So I took on the task of teaching watercolor in 1970, 1971. And from there, I started teaching watercolor exclusively at RIT. So this went on for a number of years.
That's great. And can you tell us a little bit about this work, which is incredibly large?
This particular piece here is a 4x5 foot watercolor, and it's called Charity. And really what I was doing at that particular time is combining the immediate environment with current events, along with biblical scriptures. And so this is one of I think the fifth or sixth piece that I did, which my mother, as you know, was a minister, and she was very much into being a humanitarian. She loved people, and she always gave and helped people, as well as ministered to them, through the use of the Bible, etc. But here she is on that level, in that perch above everybody, and you got the heart.
Oh, wow.
Which somebody gave me. Again, something that was physically close to me. I sort of juxtaposed it into the image of people going to see a fire. Now, why some people going to see a fire, I don't know. But the other part of it is a school bus, and not a school bus, but a commercial bus
Right.
on Main Street in Rochester, and it's supposed to be a crossroads. And another thing that I was interested in was reflections. Looking at windows, walking by windows, you would see reflections of traffic, reflections of people, reflections of yourself. And so I saw all of this here, real world, current events, and the spiritual world all combined as one.
Right.
And this is
Oh,
what I
wow.
tried to put together here.
And this piece is where now? Do you, does it
This-
hang at RIT?
This particular piece is, I own this particular piece.
Okay.
You know, because, you know, I don't want to let
Right.
it go. And it's also being used at the Museum and Science Center here in Rochester currently as a backdrop for a waterworks exhibition that they
Wow.
have set up.
Oh, wonderful.
Mhm.
Wow. I'm going to go ahead and talk and just show a few images of your work, and then you'll tell us a little about the progression if you can. So as I understand, this is a sketch, right? That you do for yourself.
Yeah, this is a plein air painting. It's a study.
Right.
And it's of Canadice Lake, which is a lake that's about 25 or 30 miles from here. And I think we get our drinking water from Canadice Lake. But I go there with a friend of mine that I've been working with over 50 years ago.
Wow.
And so we go out and start in the spring, and we work through the summer and the beginning of the fall, or late into the fall. And
Wow.
so I've done a series of these paintings, and this is one of the, I think this looks like one of the first few paintings that I started working there at Canadice Lake. And I'm using transparent watercolor. There seems to be, looks like there's some grease pencil used here, some white pencil that sort of,
right. Maybe some resist almost.
Yeah.
Great.
And what I'll do is put that white pencil down, and then I'll glaze over it with the
Right.
watercolor, so it sort of shimmers, and it's based on the reflections that I'm getting from the water itself.
Right.
You know, but also the sky is misty, and so, you know, I just used the mixed media thing to amplify the transparent quality of the watercolor.
Can I ask you if you paint like when you're doing plein air, are you painting vertically or do you sit down?
I sit down. Well, I sit and stand, but mostly sit down because I'm lazy more than anything.
It's curious how people do.
We
had a workshop with, sorry.
Yeah, I just take a little rock or something and I elevate the paper, and I normally paint on using a stretched piece of paper. I stretch it before I get there, and then I lay that on a branch or a rock or something like that to elevate it about 25 degrees, so that the water.
So you
and
incline the plane, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Right. Then you can use the falling sort of water if you like.
Exactly.
Great.
You know, I spent a lot of time working with washes. And
this is probably another plein air.
Yeah. And here I've used some.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I used some liquid masking fluid for some of the areas. I can see as I look at that, some of the areas there, I put down the masking fluid, and then I painted over it. Great.
Yes, and this is really for you, although they're also posted, and I think these works can be are framed in some places and have been shown.
Exactly.
But they're for you, kind of your own.
They're my personal, they're
personal development.
Yeah, my personal studies.
Wonderful. And this is one of your early, would you say, watercolors sort of
That's right.
transparent watercolors.
That's right. That's right. In this particular one, I use a slide projection for this painting. And I put honey or rock candy in the water itself to retard the runniness of the water. When I paint vertically,
wow.
I paint while this is vertically in front of me, so the colors wouldn't run down as much.
Wow. So you add honey to the water. That's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, I have to try that. I know that some watercolors are made with honey as a medium.
That's right. That's right.
Like Graham.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely correct about that. But that's something that started later. I think that was that medium was developed later through the use more of gum arabic.
Yeah.
But I started this back in 1969, 1970, long before I knew anything about that medium.
So M. Graham copied it from you.
I'm not sure, but I got that from, I think probably from studying the work of Turner.
Yes, fabulous.
Yeah, I'm a student of Joseph Turner.
And did you find out that he used that? That's brilliant.
Yeah, something to retard the water, the runniness of the water. But there's many other things that he did, such as scraping out the painting, additives and subtractives, that he would use, different methods that he would use. And I just copied them.
Good for you.
Using them over the years.
Thank you. Wow. Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
Someone else coming. And this is one of the more contemporary watercolors, would you say, or about in the last 10 years or?
Well, it might, I'm so old now, I forget the time.
No, you.
But I would say at least 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, I did this.
So 10, 15.
And this is done on, you'll notice that this paper is a little different. It looks different than the other. And that's because it's on hot press watercolor paper. Okay.
Okay.
300-pound hot press watercolor paper. Which is a much more flat plated surface. Okay, a hot roller is rolled over this. So you can see that there's a different kind of application of paint.
Yes.
There's both the smooth rated wash as well as just the heavier washes glazed on top.
How interesting.
So the idea of using the very transparent, smooth planar washes, and then the planar washes that are a little bit more heavier.
Right. And I see that this is framed, a floating frame, so that you see the edges of the paper as well. Very, very interesting. I'm going to keep going because you have a lot of work and I want to show as much as possible. This is a tribute to Frederick Douglass, who was a Rochesterian.
Exactly. I mean, he was a social worker. He was a minister, wonderful minister. I mean, that whereby the word was woven into the embodiment of his life and his orations. And he's key. He's almost like me using Turner and the techniques of Turner in my paintings. I use what he advocated in his life experience and his orations as part and parcel of what it is that I do content-wise with my artwork.
Right. Wow. And I asked Luvon if he used stencils to do the lettering, and he told me no. So that this is done mostly freehand. Am I correct?
You can see it.
I am so admiring.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's handwriting.
Right.
I mean,
But-
it's the human touch. That's
Right.
more important to me than the accuracy.
Yeah.
No, it's how
right.
everything collectively works together. I'm more concerned about that.
Very interesting. And here you are looking at a variety of your work, which was on exhibit. And I'm going to go to the next big one.
Yeah, this painting was probably done somewhere around 1992 or something, 94,
It's
96,
a little bit
98 or
older.
something.
Okay.
Yeah, it could
Right.
be right in that period of time. I know it was in the 90s.
Right.
And again, I've used current events, I've used the natural environment, physical environment, as well as some biblical elements here in this painting. You know, many times I'll use the four gospels. So you see the lion and you see the face of a man, you see the face of an ox, you know,
Yes.
the eagle. But those are the
Wow.
four gospels, and those things are constantly being, you know, preached through the church or on the radio or whatever. But also,
Right.
there's also these things that are going on in terms of current events.
Right.
And this was during the time when President Bush, I think George Bush, was the president at that time.
Right. Senior,
And then we have the Emir of Kuwait. They
Wow.
met during that period of time, in 1998, I believe. And what we have the red horse, which is war, the black horse, symbol of pestilence, and then the white horse is both, you know, Antichrist, as well as the Christian movement, you know, coexisting simultaneously. These are spiritual forces more than anything else. So, you know, we had wars and rumors of wars, and certainly we had earthquakes and all kinds of other things going on at that time. So,
and again, sort of a reflective look to the whole thing where you superimpose
exactly. Exactly. It's a form
Are
of
you
reality.
projecting them, do you think, or are you imagining the superimposition?
I project a lot of images, but some of the images, I mean, like the images is put together in position wise or design wise or compositionally as being a wheel or in the symbol of a cross.
I see,
So,
sort of,
so it's
yeah,
sort of a
sort of
mandala. I mean, the symbolism is really the placement of the symbolism compositionally is the thing that I was mostly interested in. And of course, the clouds sort of pull everything together.
Right, and it's a good horizontal to bring reflections. That's very interesting. Oops.
It's a 4x6.
I'm sorry, my mouse is
it's okay.
A little hyperactive. I hear that this bridge no longer exists.
That's what I hear. That's what I understand. I think at that time,
so it's a train bridge near Rochester. Again, at plein air.
It's Letchworth Park.
Letchworth State Park. But the bridge has been replaced, but that bridge is no longer there. It's an arch now. It's a modern arch bridge. Yeah. And this is a state park with a large fall. That's a waterfall underneath.
Wow, beautiful
space. So
wow. Yeah. And you also do a little bit of sculpture. I found this in a video. Which, so you're repurposing kind of things that you find.
Yeah, the sculptures are just like my paintings. They're found objects. They're things that I find around, that I find them to be interesting to look at. You know, I think I made a statement in one of my lectures about sort of getting a handle on things. So those handles, I don't know where they came from, but they seem to work well with the with the driftwood and the circle that was bought from a craft store, and but they're just found objects. And then I've sort of added some painting, some of my
Yes,
paintings to it.
surfaces
Yeah,
that are painted.
yeah. So it's a collage, montage type
Mhm.
of a three-dimensional
And
thing.
I see your other painting back here hanging in the same gallery. That's
Yeah.
great. The
Yeah,
big one.
That
yeah.
clinic.
Oops, now, oops, sorry, I don't know what the matter is with so this is the cover of a book of your work that you put together. Right,
Yeah,
and-
yeah. Yeah, it's
Could
called
you tell
Miracle.
us a little about what's in that book?
It's a book called Mirror the Word, and again, they're images mostly made up from my face and my daughter's face. I have 4 daughters, and I think about the genealogy or the legacy that will go on throughout our lives, not just mine, but through our lives, and the interconnections that we have with each other through life, and the journeys that we're having in our lives. And at the same time, I'm very interested in the African sculpture. So the multiplicity of the faces, along with the multiples of the profiles of my face and my daughters, I just combine all of those things in relationship with landscapes. Not so much the look of a landscape, but just borrowing things like the sky, the clouds, the land mass, and so on and so forth, and just sort of combine all of those things together.
It's great. And I think you told me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're looking at your old pieces of watercolor on paper and sort of cutting them up, which I think is so brilliant.
Yeah, this is made up of pieces of mylar, which is somebody gave me.
This,
Yeah, they gave me some mylar, and then I looked at some of my old watercolors or discarded pieces that I painted and never finished, and I started to cut them up and
love
play
it.
around with them. This whole idea of being inventive and creative and cutting and pasting.
Yes.
I think I got that idea basically from Robert Motherwell, who said when he ran out of ideas, he would go back to working with montages and collages. I think he called them shingle lays,
Very
and he would use that to stimulate himself so that he would produce more work, and so when I come into my studio, I'm not necessarily thinking of a medium or some kind of materials. I just come in and start walking around, looking around, and combining things. It's just sort of a natural sensibility to do that. I mean, if I can find something to paste or glue something down together, I find that to be interesting.
Wonderful. In a way, like you mix people together. And
Exactly.
community together.
I think that's really good. I'm gonna have to use that.
No charge. So this piece is sort of a combination, and maybe it's a digital combination, right, of what we just saw, because it's at the bottom.
Yeah, again,
But it's sort of a totem.
yeah, it's like a totem pole or a piece of African sculpture. And when I look at the different movements or dynasties of Asian art, I see that juxtapositioning, vertical juxtapositioning of imagery. It's like there's many stories woven into a story.
Wow.
The complexity of that is always interesting to me. And how do you do that? I mean, it's hard to do that on a two-dimensional surface, horizontally, or circularly or circle wise or whatever, but vertically, it seems to work more contormically with life itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, you can spend a lot of time. They make a visual impact, but when you get close, you have lots of sort of little gifts to the viewer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how it was done.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little stories, little woven. Well, they're not so much narrative stories as they are stimulating form structures, and the torn pieces of paper, the hard edge and the torn edge, and the multiplicity of all of those things. It's just I enjoy it. I mean, it's stimulating to me. It's how to make them all collectively work together, cohesively, is the thing that I think turns me on.
Wow. And this is gorgeous too. I love that, you tear watercolor paper because it's not an easy paper to collage, but that's what gives it the three-dimensionality at the same time. And it looks a little, more sculptural, of course, than just thin collage.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that if you use a 300-pound piece of
Paper.
watercolor behind it, that enhances the integrity of the piece.
Are you mounting it on 300?
Yeah, most of the
Like you're
time that's what
backing-
most of the time that's what I do, or else
Okay.
I'll collectively put them together so they have
Yes.
a more rigid structure to them.
Right, right. So this would be quite rigid. There's this beautiful. Yeah, so this more faces, more overlap, and sort of rotating around the central uniting feature.
The piece that was on the front cover, I just turned it to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks different.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah,
I found this one on not displayed on a website, but on a video recording of an interview of you, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, this is one that I really, I think I sold this one, ironically. Yeah, but you can see here I have just mixed everything
I love this
together.
quotation.
Yeah.
Who's the quote by Luvon?
You remember?
I do not remember.
Is it, Frederick, is
That really resonated.
It's not Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
quote,
his
though.
image is in there.
And Frederick Douglass images is in there, but if you
Right.
want
Here
something
is it.
you have never had, then you must do something you have never done. I don't know where it came from, but I stole it, I adopted it. It sounds very real to me.
I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I do too. I love it.
It works.
I can see your face here on sort of looking at us and at the same time in profile, which is.
You see and right next to me is my daughter's face. It's a little bit.
Ah.
As you saw earlier, my granddaughter, if I didn't have her here to help me out, we would be in trouble.
Yes, we are all in trouble without a young person in our lives.
You got it. You got
A
that
very
right.
young person. That's great. I love this piece too. I mean, I love them all. This is like a diptych, and you even mounted it so it projects the shadow.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Again, when I put that heavier piece behind it,
Yeah.
and I try to create a bas relief. And like I said before,
Yes.
I'm strongly
bas relief,
influenced by sculpture.
Yes.
So having that little shadow there, again, creates something
Yes.
illusion-wise that I
That
can't
wouldn't
create
right.
otherwise. Yeah.
Wow. Again, wow. So after you cut, you are looking for images to unite. For example, you might extend the tree or not necessarily.
Well, when I first started experimenting with these, with cutting up the watercolors, and I thought I was doing something very abstract and unique. It was without the profiles of the faces. And it was just abstract form, just circulars or circles or just forms.
Yeah.
And some of them were just torn pieces of paper, and when I collectively put them together, one of my students says, "Oh, they remind me of your landscapes." And of course, I didn't see landscapes. I mean, that was the farthest thing from my mind. But once the students said that to me, I began to reinforce that whole thing, and so the landscapes, became more and more part of the collective imagery.
Wow, that's great. Another, I love how this tree sort of follows the.
Yeah, I was taking
Dance.
G-clay prints of my work, and I didn't like the idea of taking my watercolors and reproducing them and selling them, cheaper or whatever.
Right.
Somebody, I guess some galleries said that they would never sell any work that was not original. And so I said, well, what I'll do is just take the reproductions that I've had done and use them the same way I would use magazine cutouts, recreate imagery with them. And so that's where this idea came from.
Very interesting. Thank you for explaining that. Oops, sorry, I meant to. This is about you.
Yes.
In hiding.
Again, these were some cards that I was using for a show.
Oh.
And I took the cards and I took a profile of my face and I cut them up and juxtaposed them and put them back together, and through the use of look like a series of things that I've done here with spray paint, as well as going back over some of the images using mixed media techniques. I combine them back together. Again, this combination of a sculpture and a two-dimensional form constructively being put together is something that I was interested in.
Wow. I love this one too. With this sort of incomplete lettering, but sort of evoking more than telling.
Yes, that's a good word that you just used. I think that's really the content behind everything that I do. I don't narratively make a complete statement. It's just to provoke thought, and to generate thoughts. Hopefully, in a broad, humane fashion.
Would you tell people a little bit about when you grew up, or you told me, and I forgot to ask you before, but how you grew up with your grandparents and your parents were traveling. And you were looking at the sky and the clouds.
And clouds are very important to me. I guess my father was in World War II. My mother had left to come north to try to find a better living for me and my brothers, and so I was left, with my grandparents, and they were good people. They were I love my father's parents, but they weren't my real parents. And I felt that lost. And many times I would go out in the yard by myself and wonder where was my parents, and what were they doing? And, I wondered why they weren't there for more than anything else.
They couldn't text you.
Yeah. So I started looking at the clouds.
Wow.
And I had this strange vibration from the clouds. And I think at that particular point, I became very concerned about who God was.
Mhm.
And I'm still concerned. I mean, that same kind of feeling has been with me all my life, and that's probably something that I'm still searching for. Is that encounter that I had when I was a child that gave me so much peace and confidence in being who I was, and the love that I got from that source was very important. And I think I also mentioned to you that the thing that started me to think about art was some hands that I saw. I didn't see my father's face for many years. And so he drew a profile of a face, and then he took the cuff of his pants, cut them off, his khaki pants, and made a little cap for my head and put a little insignia from the army, pinned it on the cap. And also he made a little boat with a propeller, with a rubber band on the back that he put on the water after he made it, and it kind of moved across the water. And this is something that has stuck with me and really brought me into who I am, I believe, as a visual artist.
Mhm.
I knew I would always work with my hands, and I always loved to create painting and drawing things, even before I could read or write.
That's wonderful. What a great story. Thank you. I have some more, but maybe we could open it up to some questions that people might have. Since you're so rich in experience and thought, do people have questions for Luvon?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Was your family supportive of your pursuit of visual arts or teaching?
My mother especially, she didn't know much about art. She only had fourth grade education, but she was a very bright woman, and a woman that encouraged us to always do better. Matter of fact, I knew that the reason that she left us was to find a better life for us so that we could get a better education. So upward mobility has never been a problem for me, because I know that that's something that she worked fully throughout her life for.
Yeah. Of course, many families are sort of not as supportive of an art pursuit.
That's true, especially art. But she always encouraged me, and and I know that I was the first in the family to get educated, and probably have gone farther than anybody else that I know of in my immediate family, as far as getting an education. But still, she, even with me advancing in that area, I still had to knuckle down and do everything else everybody else had to do. You had to wash the dishes, you had to carry the garbage out, you had to buckle down and be a normal person.
Right. But what is so wonderful is that you can then encourage others in the community who might have very humble beginnings and whose family may not be supportive.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's, you're sort of in locum parentis for art.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
youngsters. Penny, you had a question.
Yes, I have to say, I am so impressed with you and also with your work. It's just beautiful and you're so creative. Do you teach anything virtually?
Or did you
Tell you,
have
I
to
am an
even during COVID?
octogenarian, and you
I
see
don't
me
feel, I don't
here.
feel adequate enough to do justice in that area, but my students, they text me all the time and send me work, and I comment. And I have a friend who's in a Mexican friend that I converse with, or that send me work, and I taught him some things. He's still doing some great artwork. So I mean, indirectly yes, but directly that's not something that I really think that I do well.
And what about your book? Does your book have instruction in it, or is it mostly your paintings and your work?
It's more of a picture book than anything else.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's more of a,
tell you-
Scrolling through some of your art because I want people to be able to see it more as you're talking.
Well,
I have
thank
to
you.
tell you that two of my favorite artists are Mary White and Jonathan Green. And I see a little bit of what they do in your work as in combination almost. I don't know, you're most likely familiar with Mary White, and do you know Jonathan Green?
Well, I know that they're both colors.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I know of. I don't know them
I love both
individually.
of
No.
their works, yeah.
Yeah.
Mariana, I posted a question in the chat.
Yeah, yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Luvon, could you talk a little bit more about your inspiration, where it comes from for you? And especially, this is important for me, what do you do when it comes and goes, ebbs and flows?
Well, my
Should
inspiration
I
really,
stop sharing so we can, let me stop sharing so we can see one another better.
yeah. I think my sort of inspiration comes from those clouds again. It's my connection with it's my spiritual sensibility and the spiritual connection that I have with God. Every day is a new day. It's a new experience. And when I look back and I see where I come from, I can see evidence of that spiritual elements in my life. And that's the thing that I feel more comfortable about and secure about, and I see it in people. I see it in the way people respond, not only to me, but to each other. And there's motivation, there's hope, and there's joy in that. And I certainly have landed in the most wonderful profession for me that could ever have happened.
Did we, someone asked about, they're really enjoying your work and asked about some of the physical demands. Is that correct? Who ever asked the question, if I'm voicing it correctly?
Yeah.
Jump in if you want to clarify.
Yeah, I think research, reading, research, and learning, that's something that I can't do enough of. And I need that. I need that from my students. I think my students feed on that, but not only that, they feed it. Not only do they get it from me, but they give back to me. Okay, so I'm just thankful that I still have the energy, the physical energy. But as far as the spiritual motivation, that's going to always be there. I love it. And I think that Mariana and I have been touched by the same spirit in that particular area. She can't stop.
I hope
She
so.
can't
God
stop.
bless you. I hope so.
you.
Absolutely. That's other questions, other thoughts.
Ian, go ahead.
Mariana had talked in the beginning about the initiative where you brought art into the Rochester barber shops. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that looked like?
That goes way back 50 years ago. But yeah, when I worked at the Memorial Art Gallery, my job was to bring art from the gallery into the, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Bring art from the gallery into the community, as well as bring people from the community into the gallery. So those are people who were not familiar with art. And so one of the things that I did was establish something called a soul in. And a soul in was basically to have food that was created by members of the church, as a fundraiser for the church, to have them to come to the gallery to buy food that would, and the proceeds would be given to the church. And then at the same time, I had the bottom of the bucket, or Garth Fragan dance, to come in and do a dance performance. So I would combine the performing arts with the food thing, and then at the same time have somebody come in and do some painting, a painting demonstration or ceramic demonstration, so that it would be more activity based. And then at the same time get people to come in, and they couldn't help but look at the work that was on the wall,
Of course.
as well as enjoy these other things. So that was a way to get the community to come in who wouldn't normally come into the community. But then at the same time, to bring artwork from the gallery and place it into these into the beauty. Well, I didn't go as far as the beauty parlors, but the place where you get your haircuts, and put them there and let the work stay there for a month, and then bring it back to the gallery from time to time. And that would stimulate people. And so I couldn't keep that up for a long period of time, because it took a lot of energy.
Yes.
And ultimately I combined all of that into all of us.
Yes.
And so for a few years, that's what I did, at the gallery. And then later it branched off into all of us.
I almost can't imagine doing that now, unfortunately, because of liability issues, but it's
Absolutely.
fantastic idea.
Absolutely. I've been called out on the carpet many times for having over 700 people in the auditorium when the max was 700 people. So I would get more people in there, and so the administrators, some of the people got really upset about that, and I got called on the carpet a few times because of the success.
Or taking artwork to the barber shop and sort of leaving it there, unless you had to be there with it all the time. But what a brilliant idea. I mean, one could think of iterations of that, of bringing like prints, framed prints, if the author of the works would let it. Some of them are dead, so you can't. That are in the gallery.
Exactly.
Just, I guess some of them are out of copyright, so that would be easier than the other ones.
Yeah, that's true.
But you want to see originals, of course, and that's so. The All of Us, I think, is also another brilliant approach, especially for inner city. And this gallery, would you say, Luke and Luvon, that it is in sort of, I mean, Rochester is relatively small in the sense that the gallery serves poor neighborhoods too. It's not too far away.
Well, the position that I had there at the Memorial Art Gallery is still being observed to this day. They still have people working
Wonderful.
in that capacity,
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Well,
Mariana,
yes.
can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
Luvon, when you were talking about prepping your watercolor paper so that you get that kind of stippled effect with the painting, repelling the water. What was it you were using? What
I used Crayola crayons. I used a grease pencil, and I use colored pencils.
Yes.
You know,
You mean like those grease pencil, like those China markers that,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I
or
was thinking it was
similar,
something
yeah.
that you painted on, that you spread over the watercolor paper,
Yes.
a masking of some kind.
There was the
Oh,
one
the-
image with the
the liquid-
liquid frisket.
The liquid
yeah.
frisket, the liquid mask.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah,
heard. Okay,
yeah,
thank you so
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
You can
That's-
actually do that also with rubber cement. You don't have
Yeah,
to buy
yeah,
brisket.
yeah.
And also a glue called tear mender, which
Okay, good.
is
I have to write this
very-
down, Marianne. I won't
It's
remember.
a liquid
this.
latex. Basically, frisket is liquid latex.
Oh, okay.
But you know, Windsor Newton makes it, and other high-end art supply shops, but you can certainly try rubber cement. Although I have not tried it. Have you, Luvon or Luke?
Yeah, I've tried rubber cement and you know,
It's
and
not as
from my reading, it says that, it tends to turn the paper yellow
Yeah.
over a period of time.
even when you remove it, I see,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it stays in.
Yeah, and even when you
Okay.
use the liquid mask, it's gonna, you noticed in the painting, I didn't have a lot of control over the edges.
Yes,
Look
that's
just
the,
like a brush stroke or the mark
yeah,
so you have to take like a toothbrush or some other brush and kind of smooth that edge out.
soften
You
the
need it
edge,
to,
right?
I use shelving paper. I use
Oh, you mean like a mask, right? With the
yeah,
contact
yeah,
paper, that
yeah, I
kind of
use
thing,
contact paper. I
Yeah.
use wrap,
that has an
the
adhesive.
tape that you use for taping paper down or taping
Right.
boxes. and
Masking paper.
Anything that's
masking tape.
transparent, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and I cut the tape. I don't just
Right.
leave the tape edge the way it is. I cut the
Mhm.
edge. Okay.
Yeah,
And when I pull the edge off of the paper, I pull it at an angle rather than
Right.
with the edge
right.
itself.
So it doesn't
So
tear.
it doesn't tear the
paper.
paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
I was gonna add because, Luvon was celebrated last year by RIT for 50 years of teaching. But I remember probably 38 years ago when I had you, I remember what a revelation. He had this 300-pound watercolor paper and he just takes it out of the sink and he's like, I don't like this area. And he just like washed it right under the warm water, and then he just scrubbed it right off. And it was like such a revelation to see someone just deal with the paper like, no, I'm gonna make this, work
Right.
and not be all delicate with it. But
Right.
we have a colleague coming a little bit later who's gonna do some framing for him, who had you 40 years ago that I taught with, but it's just, he has such a legacy. And his gallery right now, Joy Gallery, is in the Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony neighborhood, which is on North Main Street. So I'll put in a little plug for your gallery. If you're ever in town, and come
Yes,
down.
it's
He
called
spends
Joy.
every Saturday here. He opens up the doors to people. And there's an exhibit right now by a couple young artists. And then he opened it up for the art education program. They hosted their gallery exhibit last spring, which I came to, and he graciously opened up the space. So,
And
you know,
there's food.
and there was
Often.
food, and there was food, and so he's just 50 plus years of opening himself up to the community. So when you talk about inspiration, it's mutual.
beyond.
He's still inspiring us,
Yes.
30, 40 years later. So
Well,
Yeah.
it's
God bless you,
Luke is
Luvon,
an
really.
example of what you give out, and Luke is an example of how it comes back. You know, I mean, to have those things, those nice things said about you, that's wonderful. You don't have to do that yourself. So,
Wow. You
but,
know, there was a recent article in the New York Times about, and I couldn't find the link to the article this morning, but I read it a few days ago about older artists and how older artists are thriving, like David Hockney
I
and
saw
several
that,
others whose
Mariana.
name I
Yeah.
can't remember right now. But like art keeping you young, I think. And it's like that mission or that vision you have is what just keeps giving. And it's just amazing. And I think many artists probably are propulsed by it or like keep going on that fuel
I
of
think you're right.
inspiration and vision.
I think you're
And
right.
it is so amazing to talk with you, Luvon. And I so thank you very much. I don't know how to thank you enough for what you do. I've been learning about it. I wish we were closer in your community. But anybody visiting Rochester, you have to go to the Joy Gallery, especially on Saturdays, and meet
Well, thank you.
Luvon, because
Thank you,
he's an
Mariana.
amazing person and
Thank you.
artist
Thank you.
and teacher and mentor.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions before we close? Any thoughts, or let me see if in the chat I missed anything. What was the substance used on watercolor paper? I think we tried to answer that one. Yeah, I want to go take a class with you too, but I don't know how I can do it.
You
I-
travel to this area, to DC?
Do you ever
Well,
travel?
I can travel. You get a group of people
We
together.
can
I
bring
will
you?
come. I will come.
All right, yay, that would be fantastic. And Luke, you come too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be great?
I
Will
would
your
love
wife
that.
object, or will she come along?
Oh, she would love for me to go.
Okay.
She's downstairs
Oh.
waiting for us right now, so.
She's doing what, Luke?
Downstairs, she waits, she comes and waits for Luvon.
Oh,
patiently.
right. I
She's
met
waiting
her
for the
that
gallery.
day at the
Yes,
workshop.
yes, yes.
Well, I hope we hear more from you and about you. Let me see, I think there's a new chat. Do you show in Boston nowadays? Does your work go to Boston sometimes?
I will go wherever I am invited. Believe me,
Well,
Yeah, have
You're
breath
fantastic.
will travel.
have watercolor paper will travel.
Yes, by all means.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so very much. This
Well,
was
thank
wonderful to
Thank
be with
you.
you, spend an hour. And I
Thank
wish
you.
we could do more, but maybe you'll come back in a few years
I would
and
love,
we'll interview you again,
I would love that. I would love,
or in a few months.
yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
We,
Maria. Thank you,
Yeah, it
Luvon.
was wonderful.
Thank you. This was wonderful.